Prabhupada explains at the end of this purport that this is the process of surrender. So clearly, it's not possible to attain this state all of a sudden, but if we can attain this state, then we can be in full surrender. So then he describes that Paramabhyaya means the spiritual world, the eternal situation. We're on text 5 now, and this reviewing up to text 6. And then he has this one verse description of the spiritual world. It's not illumined by sun or moon, by any fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to the material world. This is one of the places, 3 or 4 places in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says you go there and you don't have to come back. The only place. You may go to the heavenly planets, Siddhaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, but none of them are permanent. They will eventually come back to this world of birth and death, this Martyaloka. And then he has this very key verse in text 7, Mamai Vangsha Jiva Loki. Prabhupada would often quote this verse in combating the Mayavadis. The word Sanatana there. Living in this conditioned world of my eternal fragmental parts, due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. Now, the idea that we're angsha means particles eternally, sanatan. This is how our acharyas understand this. That if we're eternally angsha, we never merge, we never lose our identity as particles, as subordinate to Krishna. So it's a struggle in this material world. We want to get out of it. And then he describes, continues to describe in text 8, the process of transmigration, how this living entity is struggling with this mind, and at the time of death, we leave the body with the mind and the senses, and the living entity material world carries the different conceptions of life from one body to another as air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and he can quits it and take another. So we're cultivating our mentality, our consciousness in this lifetime, and that's compared here to a set of aromas that we take with us. And if the air passes over the garbage heap, then it's negative, and get a very low body. But if we cultivate the mode of goodness, we'll get a favorable body. And of course, the best thing is to cultivate Krishna consciousness, where you get a spiritual body. You're going to have some body. You can't stay unembodied. And then yesterday's verse describing the 5, or today's verse describing the 5 senses that we'll get accordingly. So what we do with these 5 senses, this is the whole process of devotional service. Understanding that, I explained, it came a little late, in today's verse 9, the last word is upasevate. This is a verb, that we get a certain set of eyes, ears, intensive touch, etc. And thus we experience a certain set of sense objects, according to the body we're in. That word upasevate can also mean, I looked it up once long ago in my editorial work, become addicted to. You can become addicted to a certain set of sense objects. So we're determining, and I referenced last time we met, this verse from the 13th chapter, which is very pertinent. Purusham prakatisto hi bhunkte prakati jangunan karananguna sangosya sadasajyoni janmasu. Here's this word sangha again. The living entity in the material world, prakatista, is situated within nature. And from nature are generated these modes of nature, the gunas. So purusha bhunkte prakati jangunan. Prakati jan means generated from nature. And we're enjoying, or more experiencing, because sometimes it's painful also, but we're experiencing the different, endless varieties of these modes of nature. Bhunkte prakati jangunan. But in human form of life, we can choose which modes of nature we're going to cultivate. So that's the third line. Karanam gunasangosya. Asya means for him, or for that living entity. The cause of what kind of body you're going to get next, good or bad, is how you associate with the modes, how you associate with the object of the senses. And that's the whole process of devotional service. Don't do this, do this. Don't associate with this type of person, right? And we know sadhu sangha is so important. And association with materialists, or anything that cultivates different modes of nature, that distracts us from Krishna consciousness and it can cover our spiritual knowledge. So this is the process of transmigration in a nutshell. And if we want to stop it, it means we need to associate with the mode of goodness and pure goodness, and cultivate become addicted to Krishna. I've been using this analogy lately, because you got to become addicted to something, right? we're already addicted. So in human form of life, we can redirect that addiction, or that strong desire to associate with, let's put it that way, toward Krishna and things directly related to Krishna. The devotees, the holy name, right, the service, Krishna, the spiritual master, all of those are available to us, by which we can cultivate, purify the consciousness, so we don't have to come back again to another material body. So that's what is being described here. Any discussion on this verse? We can continue. He continues to describe this process of transmigration. I found this in all the Bhagavad Gita to be like the most concise and clear, description that you can give to anybody of how the living entity goes from body to body. Very interesting. Okay. Utkramantam stitam vapi bunjanam vagunanvitam vimudhana anupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Text 10? Okay, I'm sorry. Purport. The word jnana chakshusha is very significant. It means the eyes of knowledge. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge understood from the Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. So, this is what's so unique about Srila Prabhupada's books, is that you can, if you read them carefully, you can see there's a certain urgency, in his message that he's giving us, and it's informed, if you will, by his sense of compassion, a sense of caring for the reader. He's not trying, he's not trying to exploit. He's certainly not write these books to make money or fame. Why did he go to all this trouble? Because exactly here he's seeing the urgency of this knowledge, which is the only way to open people's eyes to the reality. What's really breathtaking is when you sit back and contemplate how everybody in this material world, practically 100%, except for the few who are really cultivating this knowledge, are bewildered more or less, mostly more, about who they are, what the goal of life is, where real pleasure lies. It's a huge matrix, where it's very, very complicated. It seems totally real, But we're taught in the Bhagavatam, in no uncertain terms, in Bhagavad Gita, but really in detail again and again in Bhagavatam, that it's faulty. It's a reflection of the reality, but it's not the reality. I mean, we get that in the second chapter. Na asato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. Na asato vidyate bhavo. For the asat, there's no real bhava. In this case, in this context, bhava means existence. And for the sat, for the real, there's no non-existence. There's a double negative. Sometimes Krishna uses it like that. Meaning spirit is reality. And material nature is a kind of a dream world. You know? I mean, we don't say it's unreal, but it's definitely not what we think it is. That's the point. Just like a dream, right? A dream, you can't deny reality. Something's going on in there. Your brain is working, right? But what you're perceiving is not what reality is, you know? And when you wake up, you realize, oh, it was just a dream. Means that it's not reality. But at the time you're in the dream, it's certainly real. And this brings up this verse that most of you actually here haven't probably heard of yet. And that's the verse that appears 5 times in the Bhagavatam. I have to say, 4.5 times. It appears 4 times in exact identical words, and the 5th time, the first line is the same, and the general thrust of the meaning is the same. And it's exactly this theme, which starts with the banyan tree, which is just a reflection, not a reality, but it's real to us, isn't it? And so what he says there, this is twice Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Kapila Dev, I think once or twice, and in the 4th canto it appears again, and one other place in the half verse. So he says, Arte vidyamane pi, Arte vidyamane pi, Sangsatir nanavartate, Dhyayato vishayanasya, Swapne nartagamo yatha. Now why 5 times? Exactly this point. So what it means is that this sangsriti, this is samsara, this is this material world of birth and death. And as soon as you say samsara, it indicates the pains of birth, death, old age, and disease. But basically all of the suffering in this world. He says it's ultimately not real. It's like a dream. But it doesn't cease. The sufferings don't cease for one who is dhyayato vishayan. Now, those who are familiar with the 2nd chapter, this rings a bell. There's 2 verses. Krishna begins with those very words. Dhyayato vishayan pungsas sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama koda vijay. He gives a graphic description of how the living entity falls into this vortex of illusion and really is destroyed, practically destroyed. So in those verses he says, when one contemplates the object of the senses, dhyayato comes from dhyayan means meditating. You know, really fully contemplating the object of the senses, one develops attachment for them. And if you continue, that sangha really becomes strong, it becomes kama, very strong desire to enjoy. That's in general, that's what kama means. And kama is inevitably frustrated somewhere along the way, because your desire to enjoy is unlimited, and your ability to enjoy is obviously limited. So there becomes krodha, anger. Now, on a larger level, we know that krodha, of course, can be expressed as we know it. But also, if you can't express it, it turns inward and becomes depression. That's also krodha, something like krodha. But one way or another, your desires to enjoy are going to be frustrated. So, and krodha bhavati sangmoha. But from this krodha, you become bewildered even more. And samha smriti vibrama, you lose your memory. And smriti bhrangshat buddhi nasho, from loss of memory, which is located in the intelligence. That's a function of intelligence. The buddhi becomes destroyed. And when buddhi is lost, and you're finished. But there's a you know, that's the degradation. And the next verse describes how you can fight that. Raga dvesha vimuktastu vishayanindriyaischaran atmavarshe vidayama prasadam adhigacchati. So the whole process begins with contemplating the objects of the senses in an enjoying mood, and then goes down from there. Attachment, lust, anger, so etc. So here he's saying, Krishna says in 267 or so, Raga dvesha vimuktastu, for one who has accepted the regulative principles of freedom, that he can, even as the senses are moving about the sense objects, you're free of raga and dvesha, the opposite side, attraction and repulsion. Raga dvesha vimuktai means totally free of. Vishayanandriyascharan. How can the senses do that? Atma vasha, through self-control, achieved through vidhe atma. Vidhe means, vidhi means the rules and regulations of the Shastra. So when the soul has accepted them, when we've accepted them, and we're living a life, then you can avoid this trap of becoming attached and going down. And then you get prasadam adhikachati. You get the grace of the Lord. And from there, you become happy and you're free of misery, like it goes on. So back to our present verse. So it all begins with realizing that this is not the reality we're looking for. We're trying to get to the real, which is hidden by all this dreamlike, manifestation. So, and then he uses this word, back to our verse that appears 5 times, swapne yatadamo yata, just as a dream. Suppose you're in a nightmare. So you're in a nightmare, and you're sweating and yelling. It won't cease until you wake up. That's the point, right? It won't cease until you wake up. So similarly, the miseries of material life won't cease until we wake up from the illusion of trying to enjoy the senses. Dhyayado vishayana, as soon as the consciousness is absorbed in that mentality. So Krishna consciousness takes that very mentality of enjoying and turns it toward Krishna. So the service, instead of serving the senses, you use those senses to serve Krishna. So the soul is now linked up to Krishna, not to the sensation that is such a ephemeral and harmful thing. So this is what's going on. And when the soul is in the modes of nature and in this, we can't see all of this going on. We only see what in terms of what we know and what we experience. And that's the illusion. Vimuda, totally frustrated. And then this idea of seeing, which is again and again a theme in the Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter at the end, he talks about one who sees the soul and the super soul, really sees, and on again about seeing. Because we really live according to what we see, what we experience, what the conclusions we draw from the senses headed by the sight. And then it forms a certain mentality, and that's how we live our life. So how to see through the eyes of Shastra. Remember the phrase, Shastra Chakshus, to have the eyes of Shastra. So without that, then we're fooled life after life by this phantasmagoria. Wonderful word that Prabhu introduced us to. Any questions on text 10? We want to get out of this Vimuda consciousness. Get Jnana Chakshus. Okay. Text number 11. Yatanto yoginas chainam Pashyantyatman yavastitam Yatanto pyakutatmano Nainam pasyantya chetasaha. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. Purport. There are many transcendentalists on the path of spiritual self-realization, but one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how things are changing in the body of the living entity. The word yoginaha is significant in this connection. In the present day, there are many so-called yogis, and there are many so-called associations of yogis, but they are actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied if the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. They are called yatanto pakutatmana. Even though they are endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of the transmigration of the soul. Only those who are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world, and the Supreme Lord, in other words, the bhakti yogis, those engaged in pure devotional service and Krishna consciousness, can understand how things are taking place. So this is one of Maya's many tricks in keeping us here. And that is, we're ignorant. This is one of the qualities of Kali Yuga. Manda sumanda matayo. Sumanda matayo means misguided. So short-lived, they don't live very long. You read about the yogis, they meditate for years and years, decades, 100 years. Can't do that. Kalab asmin yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagavadgita. So Prabhu, I heard recently a lecture, Prabhu was running through these. So manda means, first of all, lazy. Here we are. This is the 27th year I've been carrying on these classes, But it's increased. I used to have 2 people, and I told this Mataji would come. You remember Padmavati? Yeah. So she would, when I first came here, she would sometimes be the only student. I said, I can't just have one lady. You have to at least bring a friend with you, So gradually she got someone, she would drag someone to come. And for years, 1 or 2, 3, 1 or 2. So now we've tripled our attendance, so it's very... But the point is, it's just a handful, The material energy is so powerful. So people are lazy, or, it's not even it's not a question of laziness, it's just not even consideration to actually practice self-control and yoga and all these things. But there are some. But those many who are interested in spiritual life, and I brought up this point that it's kind of indomitable. I give you the example of Russia. For many years, the official government principle was to stamp out religion. Now they had, a whole generation of people who had been raised in the Greek Orthodox Church, Russian Orthodox Church, and you had all these churches. So you didn't want to, you didn't want all this disturbance. So you let the old people go to their churches, but they were hoping it would die out. They would, in the schools, it was all atheism, and they would, do these things in the churches where turn them into factories and museums, But they couldn't stamp it out. There was this need. And when it opened up in the early 90s, there was a flood. I mean, have you seen, there was this, do you need a chair? We have more chairs, Prabhu. You okay? Okay. So there are more books, though, aren't there? Yeah. Check. You can get it. You have your own? Okay. So do you ever see, there was this incredible video I remember seeing of it was after, Soviet Union fell and things were opening up. It was in Moscow, and it was in a huge stadium, I think, and it was filled. Were you I don't know, this was 91, before your time. You weren't even born.
I was born in 1988.
Okay, so he's 3 years old, so you missed it. But I mean, there was tons, and they were all chanting Hare Krishna. And the blissful faces on these devotees. And they were all made underground. You've heard it, they're copying the Gita and sending it out, And imagine getting a Gita like that, how you would read that Gita, Wow, somebody took their life in their own hand. And so there was this tremendous, and it wasn't just us, the Christians, all kinds of things. There was tremendous desire that had been built up. You can't stamp it out. But unfortunately, as mentioned in this verse, manda sumata matayo, generally people are misguided, because there's all kinds of charlatans. Prabhupada had his own experience of these yoga studios, right? He was staying with Dr. Mishra, and he knew, and then the Ananda Ashram, And so, yes, the desire is, we're on page 604, 604, Okay. So it gets diverted, diverted. People get cheated. They get cheated out of the real thing. So this is going on. So in order to, so they're unfortunate. So here, Prabhupada, yatanto yoginas, yatanto is an important word. Yatanto means endeavoring. We're meant to be yatis. In fact, one of the words of the sannyasis is a yati, someone who is really striving all the time, seriously, It brings up this one verse I probably quote all the time. Labdvasu durlavam vidam bahusambhavante manusham artadamanityam abhiyadira turnam yateta napatoda anamityayava nikshayasaya vishayakara sarvataksya. So it's one of these verses that's appropriate for any audience. So he says, we have attained, this is in Bhagavad Gita, he's saying, one has attained this human form of life after going through so many other species. Sudurlabhamidam, very difficult to attain, rare. Bahusambhavante, manusham, human form. Artadam, now what's the special thing? It can actually bestow upon you the final goal of life, artha. Artha means the goal of the soul, in this case. But it's temporary like all other forms. So one has to be dhira. In other words, be very introspective and self-controlled and don't get bewildered by all of the phantasmagoria. Then what do? Don't waste any time. Turna means immediately. Yateta, strive, just like it says here. Turna yateta anumritya yavat. Napatet, as long as the body hasn't fallen down and died, and you have your wits about you. Because anumrityu means that death is always following you, on your shoulder. In other words, it's urgent. So turnam, don't waste any time. And what should you strive for? That's the whole point. Nikshayasa, the ultimate good. Because after all, in all these other species we've been through, we've had the vishya. Here's that same word, vishya. We've experienced all these different varieties of sense gratification. And the ultimate result is another body for more suffering. So strive for the nikshayasa, the ultimate good, which is self-realization, God-realization, going back to Godhead. So without that, even though one is striving as a yogi, if he's not striving in the right direction, he cannot see. He will not be situated in devotional service, self-realization, and cannot see even these rudimentary understanding. There's a soul different from the body and it's transmigrating. So we see through what we understand, the intelligence. And that's why hearing this Shastra is so important, because it changes how you see yourself, the world, everything else. And that has to be maintained, because the modes of nature, if you don't do that, you may have read the Bhagavad Gita at one point, but then you stop and you get involved, and then the knowledge is buried. you know theoretically, but you're not living it. And if you don't live it, then you lose it. That's a fact. Okay, any questions or discussion on this verse? A lot of good stuff in this 15th chapter, yeah.
One question, that when you bring up that there are these mind-body centers of meditation, so-called yogis, many of them.
Yeah, many.
I attend some of these places.
Yeah.
I am one of them, some level.
Well, you're here now, so maybe fog will lift.
By Krishna's grace, I may be doing it. But what I want to clarify, what I want to ask is something that has kind of been bottling around in my head, actually, and it's funny that this verse comes about because it's something I've been thinking about. Is it now? See, there is an individual. Let's use myself as an example. Who say I may carry Krishna in my thoughts, like 90% of the day. Like seriously, there's no way of getting Krishna out. It's there.
Good.
But there are times where I may think about certain things or do this or that. And I guess what my question is as relating to yoga, hatha yoga, or these dhyana meditation, dhyana yoga. These forms of practice, are they not obviously they're not a recommended form of practice, but are they not an effective form of an attempt to, I guess, perform devotional service by keeping, the Supreme Lord in one's thoughts while engaging in such a state of meditation, maybe a posture, asana, whatever it be, but constantly keeping the mind absorbed in either the mantra or certain prayers to representatives of.
There's value in it. It depends on what's going on, but it sounds like it sounds like what I was doing before I actually jumped in and joined. I wasn't working as a yogi or anything. I think, but I was doing a lot of that, and I was trying to keep Krishna in my mind and so forth. But there's always this aspect of devotional service that one has to take shelter, of the authorities, the spiritual master, the line of spiritual masters, and so the process that you're doing, when you join the temple, it's like you basically, okay, I don't know anything, You know, I mean, eventually that's a big surrender, because devotees, you know, you read about how devotees came. Well, they all have their own philosophies, you know, but gradually, you know, Prabhupada would you know, defeat the different philosophies, and then it was like, okay, this is what I have to do. So you can stay on a certain level of purity, you know, for some time, and not become completely swept away, you know, into total illusion. But it's difficult to overcome, because there's a lot of barriers. There's some very obvious ones, but also there's all kinds of internal and subtle things that happen, you know. And the idea is that, you know, to come to the point of full surrender, you know, means to accept the process, accept the cyclic succession, accept the spiritual master, you know, in this line. So what are you listening to? I mean, it sounds like, okay, you know, you understand the philosophy and you're trying to remember Krishna. That's very good. But Krishna himself, what does he say as a person? He says, okay, accept the spiritual master, tadvidi paribatena pariprashnaya. So you can't get around it. If you really want to be Krishna conscious in the fullest sense, that means accepting Krishna's words, all of them. You know, there's this nice analogy of the half-hen logic. Have you ever heard of that? Ardha Kukati Nyaya. It even has this official name. So it's one of these down-home Bengali thing. So there was once a farmer who had a hen. Sometimes it's said that, you know, the hen was giving golden eggs, you know, just giving regular eggs. And he thought, well, this is very good. I'm getting eggs, you know. But there's also a minus here, because I have to feed this hen, you know. So I'm a good businessman. So it's the front end I have to feed, and the back end gives the eggs. So I'll just cut off the front end. I won't have to feed it, and I get all the eggs. And what happened? Doesn't get anything. So the idea is that usually it's often applied to the Shastra, because the scripture is so rich, you know. So if you take the parts you like, you know, and you don't accept the other parts, so you de-emphasize them, that's called ardha kukadinyaya. You can't do that, you know. And classically, it's applied to, in India they have these things, the Bhagavad Saptaha, 7-day reading of the Bhagavatam, mimicking the original Bhagavatam. It was spoken in 7 days, right, to Parikit. Of course, what they don't do is just stay up 24 hours a day, don't eat, don't sleep, and listen to the Bhagavatam. It's 7 days of, you know, meeting at 10 and adjourning at 5, whatever. And what they focus on, almost 100%, is the rasa dance, you know, because that's what everyone wants to hear, right, after all. You know, but that's completely bogus. You really can't get the benefit of it. So that's an extreme example. But the idea is that Krishna consciousness as a whole, because after all, it's meant to be a complete revolution in your life, to change it, you know. And in order to achieve the actual goal, which is pure love for Krishna, not so easy, you know. So the process you're describing is something that can keep you in pretty healthy consciousness, you know. But there are certain, because it's your own idea, you know, ultimately you're not going to be able to completely realize Krishna that way. There's going to be all these subtle things.
If one was living here for maybe 10, let's say 50 years, you know, eventually one would have to make their way outside of the temple, you know, and survive within the material, you know, a house, an apartment, with other devotees. They might even have to get a job or do this. So even at these places of work, or, you know, say they're not even performing yoga, they might even find, it's my understanding, if I put myself in that kind of situation, or in that perspective, I might be more likely to meditate on Krishna in bed.
Yeah, this is the idea, and we want to go on, is that everything you're describing is, you know, there's nothing like obviously wrong with it. But the one thing that is the problem is that because there are devotees who live outside, most of the devotees sitting here, you know, don't live in a temple. There's just one of us, David. I don't even live in a temple, but, you know, basically I live near a temple. But the idea is that everyone, okay, so then we have to make ends meet. Therefore, we have to have a job. Sometimes we have to, work with non-devotees and so forth. But the point is that there's a way of doing that, because 90% or more of the devotees who are in this movement, who are Krishna, Krishna consciousness movement, live outside the temple now. When it first started, it was different. Now it's a congregational movement. But even so, those who are serious in that realm, they also get initiated. They take vows, and they're living a certain kind of lifestyle in the home that conforms to rules and regulations of the Shastra, things that Prabhu, So it's that connection that's the difference, and that makes a critical difference, as you see down the road. Okay, why don't we continue? Now Krishna kind of changes gears now in 12, and he's starting to describe himself, because this is, after all, the yoga of the Supreme Person, and he's describing now how he's sustaining various things and how he's within everything, and ultimately as the super soul. So it's a little bit of a change, starting with text 12. Yadadityakatam tejo jagadbhasiyate kilam yat chandramasi yat chagno tat tejo viddimamakam. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Purport: the unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, the moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness, lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and he is giving herewith the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole solar system. There are different universes and solar systems, and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. But in each universe, there is only one sun. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10:21, the moon is one of the stars, nakshatranamaham shashi. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff, they set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. So this reminds me of how we've been studying in the morning class, the universal form. It's the same idea. There's several descriptions of universal form in the Bhagavatam. And it's meant to teach us how to see differently. Instead of just seeing this world as a given for us to enjoy and work in and exploit, we see that all of it is a gift. Every breath is a gift, right? And the ability of the body to work, and we need so many things. Obviously, the sun, the moon, electricity, all of these things. They're gifts. And who are they gifts from? It's not just a gift of nature in general, but it's actually a gift of a person. And then that brings up the idea of a purpose to life, and why are we given that gift? There's a whole purpose to it, and that's been coming up in the morning class. That this whole construct, it has a twofold purpose. One is kind of what you would consider the duty of the governor or the government to maintain the prison house, you know. You don't just put the prisoners in there, forget them, they have to be maintained also. So that's here, you know. So we're given all of this facility, the senses, sense objects, sun, fire, moon, the whole thing, so that we can continue our effort to enjoy separately from Krishna and fulfill our karma and like that. But that's not Krishna's inner desire. He also expands as a super soul, and he comes outside as Bhagavad Gita, as avatar, as these representatives, the great sadhus and the gurus, in order to give us knowledge by which we can end this prison life and go back to Godhead. So that twofold process is always there. And that's why you know, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance day is coming up. So he's the incarnation, the most munificent avatar, because he's giving, you know, we should understand how rare it is, you know, that Lord Chaitanya comes, the same rarity that Krishna comes. Here we are sitting here, a mere 5,000 years since Krishna appeared, and a mere 525 years since he came again as Krishna Chaitanya. And we know from the Shastra, Krishna only comes once in the day of Brahma, which is like, what, 8,408,000, right? Yeah, no, it's more than 8,400,000,000 years. One cycle of yugas is 4,320,000 years. And then there's 1,000 of those in one 12-hour day, plus times 2 makes it 8 billion years. So here we are, a mere 500 years, practically we're contemporaries. It's like yesterday or a split second. So what a great opportunity, right? Lord Chaitanya does not come he comes when Krishna comes, which is once in a day. So it's become feasible. It's become so easy, really, for us to practice yoga. This Sankirtan Yajna, you know, is really happily performed, very simple to perform. But it takes one thing that's so hard to attain, faith. The faith isn't there. So that faith in the process is what's instilled by the presence of the sadhus, like Srila Prabhupada. That's what he was giving, you know. Prabhupada, I mean, he was giving so much, but along with everything was this process of faith in the knowledge, faith in the process, faith in him, you know. Otherwise, we'd be afloat, we'd be adrift in this ocean, isn't it? So here, this is, you know, what Krishna is saying. Okay, if we accept it, yes, the sun doesn't shine, you know, someone is shining it, you know. The air doesn't just happen, someone has created it, you know. And so all of this is, you know, our hearts should overflow with, you know, gratitude. Okay, we're not only alive, so many people are alive, but we're alive with the understanding of how to use these facilities for regaining our natural position, getting out of this prison. And even in this lifetime, we can experience so much benefit, freedom. You know, you can sense it, so that the faith is confirmed. Because faith means you have to have faith in something you can't directly perceive, right? But then the wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness, even you practice a little bit, and the faith is confirmed. You know, anyone who chants, I mean, when I started chanting, I like to tell the story, I was a total atheist. You know, I was just chanting as kind of a yoga mantra. You know, it seemed like a nice mantra to chant, you know. Of course, gradually I visited the temple, you know, I began to learn something about who this Krishna was. But it began with just a sound. And even if, you know, a total atheist, you know, meditates on that sound, a transformation takes place. And I was feeling transcendental. I was feeling, you know, anyway, just meditating, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. I made up my own meditation. Simple. You sit there and you breathe in, and with the young breath, as you do half the mantra, you have to do the other half of the mantra. That's my concoction. Seemed to work, you know. So even that, you know, and then I would become enlivened and go to work, you know, and chanting. And then eventually I would go to the temple, you know, or go to the yoga studio. And it would be a letdown because they weren't into Hare Krishna. You know, it was like all these demigods and all this other stuff going on. So I went from yoga studio, and finally I went to the temple. This is the one place where the more you chant, the more they like you. There's never a time when they stop chanting, so this is the place I want to be. But it all came from the holy name. So that's our great advantage that we have over previous ages, and you know, is that it's the process has been made simple, but we find that the barriers are all self-created. You know, the offenses, the attachments, you know, the lost, you know, the inattention, you know. But really, we have a tremendous opportunity, and we should use it. I wanted to, since we started earlier, I wanted to, since I have this little thing here, open up an old tradition. Be a little Krishna book. Shall we do it? Okay. You can only have so much philosophy. But actually, the Krishna book is chock full of philosophy. So, anyone have any favorite thing they'd like to hear?
Story of Mother Yashoda and Krishna
Eating the dirt?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can find that. Thing is, there's not a chapter, but that's one of the things. I think it's in here. Okay. I forgot exactly where that is. Well, I think it's in here. So this is the chapter about name giving. That's what the first thing that happens, which is a very nice a section where Garga Muni, the official priest of the Yadu dynasty, comes to visit Vrindavan. And Nanda Maharaj is so happy to see him, and he asks him if he can perform the name-giving ceremony for his newborn child. He's just been born recently. But Garga Muni is a little hesitant because he's known as the priest of the Yadu dynasty, and if he performs this ceremony in a very elaborate way, then there's going to be suspicion that Krishna is actually the son of Vasudeva, and that could cause havoc because, you know, then the cover will be blown and Kamsa will attack. So Nanda says, okay, we'll perform it in this manger over here. I use the word advisedly, secretly. So that's what's just happened, and then this chapter continues. I think this is where it's going to make. So this is a delightful section here. A short time after this incident, both Balaram and Krishna began to crawl on their hands and knees. When they were crawling like that, they pleased their mothers. This brings up a verse that I learned. Konata kanika kinkani kalapam, smitamukam uddvala nasika gramuktam, kadaditana vanita pindamangre, tanayamaveksha, nananda patni. Nananda. So Nanda Patni is a name for Yashoda, means the wife of Nanda. And Nananda means to delight. So you have this is a play on words of Rupa Goswami, Nananda Nanda Patni. So what is Kvananta Kanika Kinkani Kalapam? Means that the Kinkani are the waist bells. So this is an image of Krishna. He's crawling toward his mother. He's got a little ball of fresh butter in his hand, and he's got a pearl, a beautiful pearl, a fulgent pearl affixed to the tip of his nose. And he's wearing these waist bells, which are tinkling very sweetly. This is the classic, don't they have like 100 million of these murtis in homes around India? Right, you ever seen the little brass murti of Krishna crawling, right, with one hand up? So that's what this is. So, Kvanatakanika kinkani kalapam. So there's the waist bells are tinkling very sweetly. Kalapam means very sweet. And he's Smita Mukam, very smiling face. He's smiling at his mother. He's got the pearl on the tip of his nose, and he's got the fresh butter ball. And Mother Yashoda sees her son this way and is delighted and overjoyed and bliss, and the milk is flowing, and she embraces him like that. So that's what's described. They're pleasing their mothers. The bells tied to their waist and ankles sounded fascinating, and they would move around very pleasingly, sometimes just like ordinary children. They would be frightened by others and would immediately hurry to their mothers for protection. Actually playing this whole thing. Sometimes they would fall into the clay and mud of Vrindavan and would approach their mothers smeared with clay and saffron. They were actually smeared with saffron and sandalwood pulp by their mothers, but due to crawling over muddy clay, they would simultaneously smear their bodies with clay. As soon as they would come crawling to their mothers, Yashoda and Rohini would take them on their laps and, covering them with the lower portion of their saris, allow them to suck their breasts. When the babies were sucking their breasts, the mothers would see the small teeth coming in. Thus their joy would be intensified to see their children grow. Sometimes the naughty babies would crawl up to the cow shed, catch the tail of the calf, and stand up. The calves, being disturbed, would immediately begin running here and there, and the children would be dragged over clay and cow dung. To see this fun, Yashoda and Rohini would call all the neighborhood friends, the gopis. Upon seeing these childhood pastimes of Krishna, the gopis would be merged in a transcendental bliss. In their enjoyment, they would laugh very loudly. I'm not sure we're going to get to your requested pastime, but we'll go on with these. Krishna and Balaram were so restless that their mothers Yashoda and Rohini would try to protect them from cows, bulls, monkeys, water, fire, and birds while they were executing their household duties. And always being anxious to protect the children and to execute their duties, they were not very tranquil. In a very short time, Krishna and Balaram began to stand up and slightly move on their legs. When Krishna and Balaram began to walk, other friends of the same age joined them, and together they gave the highest transcendental pleasure to the gopis, especially to Mother Yashoda and Rohini. All the gopi friends of Yashoda and Rohini enjoyed the naughty childish activities of Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan. To enjoy further transcendental bliss, they all assembled and went to Mother Yashoda to lodge complaints against the restless boys. When Krishna was sitting before Mother Yashoda, all the elder gopis began to lodge complaints against him so that Krishna could hear. Dear Yashoda, why don't you restrict your naughty Krishna? He comes to our houses along with Balaram every morning and evening, and before the milking of the cows, they let loose the calves, and the calves drink all the milk of the cows. So when we go to milk the cows, we find no milk, and we have to return with empty pots. If we warn Krishna and Balaram about doing this, they simply smile so charmingly that we cannot do anything. Also, your Krishna and Balaram find great pleasure in stealing our stock of yogurt and butter from wherever we keep it. When Krishna and Balaram are caught stealing the yogurt and butter, they say, "Why do you charge us with stealing? Do you think that butter and yogurt are in scarcity in our house?" Sometimes they steal butter, yogurt, and milk and distribute them to the monkeys. When the monkeys are well fed and do not take any more, then your boys chide, "This milk and butter and yogurt are useless. Even the monkeys won't take it." And then they break the pots and throw them hither and thither. If we keep our stock of yogurt, butter, and milk in a solitary dark place, your Krishna and Balaram find it in the darkness by the glaring effulgence of the ornaments and jewels on their bodies. If by chance they can't find the hidden butter and yogurt, they go to our little babies and pinch their bodies so that they cry, and then they go away. If out of fear of these naughty boys, we keep our stock of butter and yogurt high on the ceiling, hanging on a swing, although it is beyond their reach, they arrange to reach it by piling all kinds of wooden planks over the grinding machine. And if they can't reach, they make a hole in the pot. We think, therefore, that you'd better take all the jewel ornaments from the bodies of your children. On hearing this, Yashoda would say, "All right, I will take all the jewels from Krishna so he can see the butter hidden in the darkness." Then the gopis said, No, don't do this. What good will it do by taking the jewels? We don't know what kind of boys these are, but even without ornaments, they spread some kind of effulgence so that even in the darkness they can see everything. Then Mother Yashoda would inform them, "All right, keep your butter and yogurt carefully so they may not reach it." In reply to this, the gopis said, "Yes, actually we do so, but because we are sometimes engaged in our household duties, these naughty boys enter our house somehow or other and spoil everything. Sometimes, being unable to steal our butter and yogurt, out of anger they pass urine on the clean floor and sometimes spit on it. Now just see how your boy is hearing these complaints. All day he simply makes arrangements to steal our butter and yogurt, and now he's sitting just like a very silent good boy. Just see his face." When Mother Yashoda thought to chastise her boy after hearing all the complaints, she saw his pitiable face and smiling and did not chastise him. And we have time for me to recite my poem in this regard. Let's see if I can remember. Yashoda's friends approached her and complained about her naughty child, the butter thief. "Oh, friend, this child of yours must be restrained. He simply torments us with no relief. We trust that you will thoroughly chastise this restless boy who steals and eats our food." But then he looked at them with love-filled smiles, but then he looked at them and changed their mood. And so Yashoda and her friends were drowned in waves and whirlpools of maternal love. In all three worlds, no greater love is found. its home is in Goloka, far above. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Sorry, I forgot one line.
So your daughter on Sunday, you guys couldn't make it. So maybe this previous Sunday, 20 guys out. So again, they're making me speak. Because everyone in India has to speak. Did you get your place? Moved it? You moved?
Well, we have a temporary place.
Oh, okay.
It's still there.
Yes, sir. Okay. What did you want to do?
Haven't been, have you?
Good. Oh, you said it's, yeah. Well, the database.
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to get the picture?
It was on the East Coast for a little while.
I mean, you can get the video, right? I don't have the computer with me, that's at my home. Oh, okay, okay, okay.
What if we give a call tomorrow because there is something which I need to read?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so I can bring
But I
it.
need to talk to you about it. I mean, I don't know if you understand what the database is. The database is like a program. But it's stuff you have to have. And you have to have the good. That means the database can go on.
Okay.
So what I will do is I will copy it and give it to you. Okay, okay.
So it's like a similar to the pocket biz, which you will find.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It has a bunch of tools. Lectures and books by people. The database is everything.
Thank you very much.
So have you ever used it? I mean, you may need a little translation.
Yeah, I've never used it. I was just talking about it.
I can show you how. Yeah, this is like a minute left.
Bulletin page was doing the camera FaceTime, and I would record the lecture for like, YouTube.
You mean a video?
Yeah. Would it be?
Yeah, actually, it's actually translated. It's being, it's on the internet.
Yeah, okay.
But if you want to find it,
Yeah, with the, HD quality and everything.
the picture might feel like it's
Okay.
But that, I mean, that meeting tomorrow, or?
I will try to get the good microphone for the camera.
Okay.
So I could
Just be aware that I'm leaving the day after go to Nima.
Mhm.
So if you want to do it, you want to do it as soon as possible.
Okay.
How do you all? You going to stay for the cube?
Yeah, I have to check something out outside real quick.
Okay. Whatever.
I mean, I have to check on the scooter outside, make sure no one took my helmet.
Oh. Why did you bring it inside?
I'm actually pacing because I really
Well, it's good that you have that. It's good that you have. It's good that when you live here, you know, there's a certain etiquette. You're a devotee, you can't get away from it.
No, I can't do it. I don't know if I'm a devotee, but I can't get Krishna out of my head.
Now remember, you should go inside, Jai. You see around Hagen and Hari Ki Jai. Jai Jagannath Baladev. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Vitinami Krishna Padaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Shatarini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shirasari Om Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shirasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shirasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare,
ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhagavadgita Astotra Shri Sriman Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem to the Holy Krishna Chaitanya Bhavanatyananda Shri Vaitika Radha Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopalpina Shanta Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Navadik Mayapur Dham ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai. Jagannath Swami ki Jai. Ganga Mahi ki Jai. Yamuna Mahi ki Jai. Tulsi Devi ki Jai. Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. 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 Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya.
they expected they would see some kind of ingenious way of everything. So when they made like the job description, they put like everything, all the programming languages, like all the tools, all the knowledge here and there and so on. So it was literally well, it's kind of a candidate themselves, kind of figure out what they want. It's like blowing all of this information. Yeah. That's mental class. As the guy who's training us in the school is actually located in San Francisco, so there is an opportunity to study on campus or online. So what I'm doing, I do online, and it requires a lot of self-work. So he tells that the toughest part is to get a first job after wrestling. I mean, I'm still working online, working freelance.
Yes, Dr. Maharaj.
Kind of, yeah.
Salem? Oh, he's going down here? Yeah, I'd have to see. Bhagavad is not there. Okay, Steve.